Rather than a sermon, we'll do what we call in the business a homily, which is a little shorter than a sermon. And I would very much like to share with you this responsive reading. It's number 551 in your hymnal. And this particular reading is attributed to the Ute people who once inhabited the mountains and plains of present-day Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, and northern New Mexico, and still dwell there. I'll read the regular type, and I ask you to respond with the italics as we honor this teaching from those teachers. Earth, teach me stillness as the grasses are stilled with light.
Earth, teach me suffering as old stones suffer with memory.
Earth, teach me caring as parents who secure their young.
Earth, teach me courage as the tree which stands all alone.
Earth, teach me limitation as the ant which crawls on the ground.
Earth, teach me freedom as the eagle which soars in the sky.
Earth, teach me resignation as the leaves which die in the fall.
Earth, teach me regeneration as the seed which rises in the spring.
Earth, teach me to forget myself as melted snow forgets its life.
Earth, teach me to remember kindness as dry fields weep with rain.
Thank you. I remember a moonlit night many years ago. An old friend and I paddled our canoe silently into the middle of a softly glistening lake. The gentle wind created lapping waves that sparkled in the soft light. There was no sound. My friend Rich said, "My ears hurt because it's so quiet." We sat for a long time in the canoe just floating. I learned that night the meaning of the phrase deafening silence. After a time, we began to slowly, wordlessly paddle across the quiet lake. We turned toward the shore and used the sounds we could hear to guide us back to our spot on the shore where our families and friends waited by the campfire. Years later, I took my wife Suzanne to visit my favorite lakeside. That weekend gifted us with another full moon, though this time the moon rose later, so the shadow of the moon was cast across a significant portion of the lake. And there weren't as many people chattering in the campground, so we lit a small candle lantern and placed it on the shoreline as a beacon to guide us home. We spoke no words as we made our way out of the shadow onto the glistening lake. Again we sat for a time immersed in unspeakable beauty. We spoke not, and in time, silently headed towards our flickering beacon. Years later, I returned to the lake again. This time, my daughter Lindsay, her partner Frank, and my then infant son Jasper were with us. We camped on an isolated part of the shore, taking our gear to the campsite by multiple canoe trips and carrying the baby along a soft trail. This lakeside site had a private beach and a stunning view. Frank, my daughter's partner, is a photographer. He was smitten by the beauty and really got some amazing photos. And a favorite that Suzanne and I can both pull up after on our cell phones is of my daughter Lindsay lying in a hammock, raising our infant grandson Jasper into the sky with the slopes and wooded forest lands across the lake in the background. I've been blessed to camp alongside, hike around, and paddle that lake many times. Those experiences in that beautiful lake hold a special place in my heart and my soul. Fast forward to this past summer. I was home in Eugene and unfortunately stuck inside because we had a smoke incursion, a reality that's become too frequent in our region. I have asthma, and so such days are hazardous to my health, so I was inside, safely behind the filters of my heat pump. We had a camping trip planned for the following weekend, so we watched the smoke forecasts and logged into an interactive online map of the fires burning to the east. I watched anxiously as the fire crept closer and closer to the shore of my much beloved Waldo Lake. Waldo, where I paddled, and Jasper Giggle is one of my favorite and most sacred places. I prayed that the winds would change. But alas, the fires reached the eastern shore. Over the days to follow, most of the shoreline and hundreds of thousands of acres of forest were engulfed in flames. The trees and brush around our former campsites have become charred cinders. I wept at the reality of my burning world. Now those dark branches and scarred trees lay under a blanket of thick white snow. I will visit a lake again in summer when the snows melt. I will remember and I will weep. Our world is burning. Forests close to home are burning. And when they do, our eyes water and our lungs burn. Climate change is no longer a theoretical construct that will happen some other time in some other place. So, when I went to the bookstore and saw on the window this book, I had to buy it. Embrace Fearlessly the Burning World by Barry Lopez. The fact that Lopez is one of my favorite essayists and just lived up the McKenzie River for me were a bonus. Now, the essays are a mixed bag. All are moving in a variety of ways. Some are challenging and often critical looks at our cultural tendencies and norms. Others are reports from his travels to exotic natural places like Antarctica and adventures like diving under the ice there and hunting walrus in Alaska when invited to hunt with indigenous hunters. Some of the most challenging parts of the book are his courageous reports about his own history as the survivor of childhood sexual abuse. Throughout the book, I felt within it a sense of love. Love for the natural world. Love for the earth. Love for life. It's with its beauty and its pain. I came away from reading being reminded of my need to acknowledge the reality of both the wondrous beauty of mountain lakes and beaches and forests and rivers and the sky, and the incredible devastation and pain both to persons and to the earth humans have wrought. In her introduction to the book, Rebecca Solnit lifts up what she calls Lopez's credo. Perhaps the first rule of everything is to pay attention. Perhaps second is to be patient. And perhaps the third is to do what the body knows. She notes that the state of paying full attention is both a prayer and the communion that is the prayer's answer. Paying attention to beauty and to destruction. One of Lopez's essays entitled An Era of Emergencies is Upon Us and We Cannot Look Away. He describes how we have lived for generations in America with our promising tomorrows waiting for us just ahead. Despite wars and corruption, depressions and recessions, despite, as Lopez describes it, an ocean of filth and poisons that hang in menacing solutions in our air and our water, we continue to believe in deliverance. By that he means equitable laws, affordable, accessible education, ethical politicians, all that will allow us to finally dismantle bigotry and injustice. Yet Lopez sees no salvation on the horizon. Our children and our children's children, he writes, seeing how tentative our responses to global climate disorder and whatever else might conceivably be coming along, have framed already their objections. Why did you not prepare? Where was your wisdom? I have to admit I find it hard to refute Lopez's dire descriptions of the status quo. And yet I found solace in the words of two sage voices. The first is from the folk singer Joan Baez, who offered that action is the antidote to despair. Action is the antidote to despair. The second is a haiku from Gary Snyder. This dewdrop world is but a dewdrop world, and yet. Indeed, the world is fragile and flammable, and we are called to action. The first step, remember, that Lopez advised in his credo is to pay attention. Pay attention to the intricate beauty all around us, and pay attention to the damage that is being done. Pay attention and embrace this beloved earth. Those of us who have committed to a faith that centers love must answer the earth's calling. We are called to be, we must be keepers of the earth, and we act out of love. From a place of deep appreciation for the many blessings we have received and a love for the children, for all the children and the children's children. We are empowered by such love to act individually, collectively, and spiritually. A few examples of such love were shared as joys and concerns with this congregation this morning. It's what we do in our own lives, it's what we do collectively and politically, and it's what we do deep within spiritually. When we speak up, let it come from our deepest spiritual values. Let's assure that decision makers and other folks remember there is such a thing as a religious left. Remember, we Unitarian Universalists are part of a faith that recognizes our place in an intricate, interconnected web of all existence. A faith that looks not to an imposed creed, but to deeds, and thus affirms our call towards action. We are blessed. Notice that truth. Be present with that truth. Affirm it. And let the beauty of the earth itself and our illimitable love be our motivation towards action. So this Earth Day weekend, celebrate the great, gay, happening, illimitable earth. Pay attention so that the ears of our ears awake and the eyes of our eyes are open. May we always seek to make it so. As we sit with those thoughts, I invite them to let them soak in deeply. I want to share some few brief words and a brief time of shared silence. These words are from William Bull Schultz, Bill Schultz, past president of the UUA, and I'm proud to say one of my professors at Meadville Lombard Theological School. Bill wrote, "We affirm that every one of us is held in creation's hand, a part of the interdependent web, and hence strangers need not be enemies. And no one is saved until all are saved, where all means the whole of creation." And now it's going to be time to take the offering that supports that work that you seek to do individually, collectively, and spiritually.